Hi, good afternoon. Hi, good afternoon, distinguished guests, colleagues, and friends. Thank you for joining us today at the Spanish Pavilion for this important discussion on the interesting of climate action and sustainable development, or as we call it, the climate development nexus. It is a privilege to see such a diverse group of stakeholders that we're here, development finance professionals, policymakers, private sector representatives, and climate experts. Your presence underscores the importance of this moment and the urgency for working together. As we are all aware, our world is at a critical juncture. Climate change poses not only an environmental threat, but a significant development challenges as well. Addressing these dual challenges requires both urgently and thoughtful coordination among all of us, across sectors and across regions. The impacts of climate change are widespread and often fall hardest on those least able to bear them. This inequity is not merely an environmental issue. It's a fundamental matter of human development, equity, and of course, justice. In this complex landscape, the role of finance becomes indispensable. Financing is the bridge that enables us to transform ambitious goals into tangible results. Without sufficient resources, policies only remain plans and projects never reach communities. Hence, our task is to create and mobilize the financial mechanisms needed to address both climate and development imperatives simultaneously. This means financing initiatives that reduce emissions and enhance resilience, and also fostering economic development and lifting people out of poverty. The theme of today's discussion, the climate development nexus, focuses in converge these two objectives. Our goal will be to explore the strategies, challenges, and opportunities within this space. We want to discuss how climate finance can be more effective in mobilization, how can we better support sustainable development, and how public and private sector partnerships can scale up the efforts to achieve our transformative impacts. Let's take a moment to consider the roles of different actors in this agenda. The public sector entities, including governments and international organizations, play a vital role in setting regulatory frameworks, creating policies, and providing initial funding to kick off climate development projects. Their support is essential for establishing the necessary conditions for private investment and for driving large-scale systematic change. The private sector, on the other hand, brings experience, resources, and innovation that are crucial for scaling up the climate-related investments. Private companies are not just providers of capital, they are sources of technological advantage, operational efficiency, and project implementation skills that can make the difference between successful program and on one that falls short. Multilateral development institutions, such as the World Bank, and development finance institutions, such as COFIDES, occupy a unique space. They can connect public and private sector efforts, offering financial instruments and risk-sharing mechanisms that help make the climate development projects more attractive and feasible for investors. Today's event aims to achieve a few outcomes. Firstly, we hope to deepen our collective understanding of the roles that different actors can play in financing the climate development nexus. How can each of us leverage our strengths for this agenda, and how can we align the efforts to ensure the maximum impact? Secondly, we want to identify strategies to scale up investments and improve access to climate finance. For many regions, particularly those that are most vulnerable to climate impacts, access to finance remains a barrier to effective action. By sharing successful models and innovative financing solutions, we hope to inspire new pathways for investment. Thirdly, we aim to strengthen partnerships across public and private sectors. Collaboration is not optional. Here, it's essential. Climate challenges don't respect national borders, and our solutions must be equity far-reaching. Strong partnerships can help to bridge gaps, transfer knowledge, and bring the collaborative action that we so urgently need. Finally, the event provides us with a plan for a plan for to discuss the real actionable ideas. Let me use this hour to share the insights, challenges that are constructively, and explore new ways of agenda for global challenges. To conclude, I would like to emphasize that we face a daunting task. We also stand a moment for immense potential. By mobilizing our collective resources, knowledge, and determination, we can turn the climate development nexus from a challenge into an opportunity. So let's approach this discussion with both urgency and optimism, knowing that we can actions we do today can shape the new generations to come. So thank you very much, everybody, for being here, and thank you for this commitment. I look forward to this and collaboration, and with that, I would like to begin. We have an incredible panelist here today that I'm really glad they can make it. And I would like to introduce, first of all, Rafael Matos, Head of Sustainable of Cofides. Rafael holds a degree in Business Administration for Management from the Colegio Universitario de Estudios Financieros, CUNEF, and joined the High Corps of Spanish State Economist and Trade Expert in 2009. He began his professional career in the Directorate General of International Finance at the Ministry of Economy and Finance, and subsequently performs the task of a senior advisor to the Ministry of Economy and Competitiveness. For 5 years, he has the Economic and Commercial Commissioner for Spain, Executive Director of ICEX in Malaysia and Brunei. From 2019 to 2022, he was served as a senior advisor in the Secretary of the State of the Environment and the Ministry of Ecological Transition and the Demographic Challenge. Mr. Matos has served as a member of the board of directors for various companies that investment funds such as Center for Development of Industry and Technology, RED-S, Spain Business Overseas, and the investment facility of the European Investment Bank. Since February 2022, Mr. Matos is the director of the Sustainable Impact Investment Division of Cofides. Welcome. The micro.
Thank you very much.
So, Rafael, can you tell us a bit of it? What is your impression on this topic? How we can, on the reflection of how we have did it in the opening remarks. What is the role of Cofides? What would you do? What do we have here to share?
Yes. Thank you very much, Elsa. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you very much for having me in this magnificent panel. I think the finance or financial institutions such as the IFC, multilateral development banks, and development finance institutions such as Cofides have a very important role to play in the shaping of a decarbonized world in developing countries in the near future. And there's a significant argument in order to be made in terms of fairness and in terms of who gets to foot the bill, basically. We must realize, and this is something that is entirely out of the question, but this is something that should frame every discussion that we have this next few days, is the fact that developing nations account for, 6, 7, 8% of total greenhouse emissions. Yeah, they are the nations, or they are the collectives that are facing the worst effects of climate change. And therefore, it is just a question of essence and a question of fairness to do something in order to alleviate the burden that these countries must face when financing projects that are going to tackle all the challenges that are being spread by climate change. It is not feasible, or it is not responsible from our point of view to leave them alone. And therefore, the first thing, or the first issue that must be taken into account in the climate development nexus, as you have said, is precisely that recognition of the paper and the role that developing countries must have, and multilateral lenders and development finance institutions must be. We must be servants to the common good and servants in terms of purveyors of long-term finance to the needs of developing nations. Because if not, if we don't carry that message, and if that is not clear all across the board, we're not going to be able to meet our 2050 targets. Why? Because developing countries need a fair and robust treatment in terms of their credit standing. They must develop, and we must help them develop capacity building, which is essential for them in order to tackle all the risks and all the challenges that must be faced. And that's essentially the role in which I humbly see myself, and I see the institution that I'm standing for at the moment.
Thank you very much, Rafael. It has been a very complete answer. Let me allow to go a little bit on our last panelists, but we will back to you with specific questions because we would like to go a little bit deeper on that. Thank you. Beatriz and Fernandez Prada is a young climate leader from Acciona. Thank you for joining us today, Beatriz. She has a double degree in international studies of sociology and a master's degree in strategies and technologies for sustainable development for Universidad Politécnica de Madrid. At Acciona, she works in the leadership area of the Global Sustainable Department, where she shapes the company's sustainable narrative. Her role involves identifying emerging sustainable trends to enhance the company's value proposition. particularly focusing on regeneration as a competitive advantage. Prior to her corporate sustainable journey, Beatriz developed her experience in consulting and international cooperation, specializing in microfinance and climate resilience in vulnerable communities across Latin America. Thank you, Beatriz, for being here with us today, and I think it's very important that to have also the young voices and the new generations here. Otherwise, it's always the same people talking the same problems. So at least we're talking with the same problems, but new people. Thank you for joining.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Elsa. Thank you very much for inviting me, to get these youngsters' voice to this panel. First of all, I'd like to start saying that the climate development nexus, I think it's been widely addressed mainly by developmental institutions, but maybe it's not that clear, like, what is the specific role the private sector should have on this regard. At the moment, we are, several voices, several anti-ESG voices are gaining, a certain degree of traction, and we want to focus on the fact that private sector has a prominent role in this regard. First of all, we know now, we have quantified like the cost of inaction, which is like more than $2 trillion from in the last decade. So Acciona believes that as we are the private sector part of the problem, we need to be private part of the solution. So there is a sense of commitment and a sense of responsibility, but not only. Why? Because we do believe that there is also an opportunity. At Acciona, just let me give you several insights on our company. We are a company in a unique sector. We provide like a very wide and different sustainable solutions in our portfolio, ranging from renewable energy generation towards urban services, water facilities, in water scarce regions and everything. So what we believe is that infrastructure is not only part of the problem, but also an opportunity to bring like sustainable outcomes to local communities. Well, I will deepen into this topic further, but I'd like to say that according to UN, more than 70% of SDG targets would be accomplished with infrastructure investment. So that's the reason why we do believe like investing in sustainable infrastructure is a trigger. It's a trigger to change the rules of the game right now, and that's the reason why we do focus in developing this kind of infrastructure that tackles down global challenges such as climate change, or even like rapid urban urbanization or development and everything. So we develop multifunctional infrastructure solutions that integrate these different sustainable elements in different parts of the world, and we face several challenges that I would like to address like onwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Beatriz. We will go a little bit on infrastructure. Also, I would like to thank you, welcome Mr. Akinicio, President for Development Finance, on behalf of the World Bank, where he oversees the strategic mobilization of bank resources, including the International Development Association, IDA, and the International Bank for Reconstruction for Development, EBRD, as well as the diverse trust fund portfolio. In his role since February 2019, Mr. Nisio focuses on furthering IDA's innovation, leveraging its equity by blending donor contribution with international resources and fundraise through debt markets, scaling up engagement in fragile countries, and finding new ways to promote this private sector development. In 2021, Mr. Nisio led the historic early IDA 20 replenishment, where development partners agreed to a record package of $93 billion. He also led the successful IDA 19 replacement in 2019, with $82 billion has committed to the world's poorest countries. He has over 30 years of experience combining managerial leadership, technical knowledge, operational experience, and a track record of collaboration with development partners. He is a British Council scholar with Mr. Phil in development from Cambridge University. He has a BA in economics from Hitotsubashi University in Japan, and an undergraduate diploma for the University of Catholic in Louis Le Angers in France. Thank you for being here with us today.
Gracias, Elsa. Buenos días, everyone.
Muy buenos días.
It's a great pleasure to be here. Sorry, this is the extent of my Spanish. I didn't do anything else.
Just, I think, speak a little bit closer to the microphone. Yeah, thank you.
So before I talk about what the World Bank does,
Wait.
it's not even on. Okay, great. Thank you. So before I go on to my talk, just a quick word of condolences to the victims of the flood. And I think this is also something that has a lot to do with climate change. In my country, Japan, this also creates a lot of damage. So I'm very, very sympathetic to what's happened in your country. I'm very happy to be here also because I think the nexus of development and climate for a long time was seen to be something two totally different things, climate and development. But I think over time, people have come to realize that they are intertwined and they are two sides of the same coin. So that's great. Now, I just want to say a few words about what IDA does in the area of financing climate action and development. So IDA is the largest source of concessional financing for climate in the world. And in the last 10 years, it has provided $85 billion total to developing countries, low-income countries. So a significant amount. And that money goes to finance projects in many different sectors, including the sustainable infrastructure that Beatrice just talked about. We are now in the 21st replenishment of IDA, and it's going to end very soon in December in Seoul, Korea. And in this context, I would like to thank the government of Spain, particularly because Spain has made a decision to make an early announcement of its contribution to IDA 21 with a very high increase, 37%. And I can tell you that 3 weeks ago in Washington, we had a celebration. And we had the finance minister, we had Ajay Banga, our president, and it really gave momentum to this replenishment. So besides financing, we also provide knowledge. We do what we call the CCDRs, Country Climate and Development Reports. This really is a kind of embodiment of this thinking that connects development with climate. We've done it for 41 IDA countries. We're going to do a lot more. And we do also many other things like what we call CRDCs, which is a climate debt clause, where if there is a natural disaster, we defer repayment for 2 years. Just a few other couple of things. As we aim for a bigger and better bank, one of the things that we are trying to do is to also work more with the middle-income countries, say like Brazil or Indonesia or India, to do more in climate, and that work has really started. And another thing that I'm looking forward to is the finance for development in Spain, in Sevilla, and we fully plan to take part in it. We have already submitted a proposal for a theme for discussion. So I'm really looking forward to participating in that event. Thank you very much. Gracias.
That's great. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for of our opponents, and also thank you for describing a little bit the work and the view. And I would like to get ahead and ask for a few questions if that's okay, so we can have a little bit more insights of how this works. Rafael, I would love to take advantage of having you here and ask you what specific strategies COFIDES implemented to mobilize private sector investment in climate-related projects, particularly in regions where financing gaps are most pronounced.
Thank you very much, Elsa. Firstly, Akihiro, thank you very much for your words on behalf of all the Spanish people present. And yes, indeed, climate change offered its nastiest visage 2 weeks ago in Spain, and the reality is that the effects of climate change can be dreadful. Well, I hope, my hope is going to be futile. This is not going to be the last example of tragedies that are going to occur because of the pernicious side effects of climate change. But if that serves as a wake-up call, then please let's use it as a wake-up call. Anyhow, as a financing institution, mobilizing private sector investment into developing countries is tricky. It isn't easy.
It's not easy.
No, exactly. And it becomes trickier and trickier every single day when you're a European entity, you're a European financial institution, with the tsunami of regulations and standards and taxonomies and disclosure requirements that we are faced. So it's, and at the end of the day, and this is something very personal, please don't quote me on this, disclosure is fantastic. It's good. It's legal compliance. I mean, there's no way around it. But you don't change the world as a financial institution with how good you disclose, how good your TCFD reports are, how good your sustainability report is, etc., etc. It serves a purpose, but it doesn't change the world. What changes the world is what you finance, how you finance, and also what you do not finance. So first things first, what not to finance. I mean, I think it is essential for development financial institutions and multilateral development banks to be clear on the messages they display and what they want to finance and what to not. I mean, negative screening serves a very good purpose, and it's a first step in order to change the world. And also, in terms of, and I'm going further away than what your commercial efforts can do for your institution, but I think it is pivotal to have a range of financial products that incorporate sustainability aspects and that are game changers by themselves. In Conferencia, so we're very proud of a program that we run, which is called Conferencia Impact. And Conferencia Impact is nothing new. It's not rocket science at the end of the day. It is just making a foolproof commitment of incorporating sustainability all across the board in all your financial products through sustainability-linked loans and through equity products that are linked to sustainability KPIs. I mean, that's obviously you're not going to change the world with that, but you're going to introduce very powerful incentives for projects in developing countries that are facing very high environmental risks, especially in climate change adaptation. I may add. Obviously, there's a disparity, or there is a debate, or there are two realities. So, financing climate change adaptation and financing climate change mitigation. Climate change mitigation is super sexy. Everyone wants to finance that. We all want to portray and to make posters of windmills in Indonesia, in Uganda, whatnot. Yes, but also adaptation is the overlooked little sister of climate change finance.
Indeed.
And that's something that I would like to have the magic answer to that. I'm afraid I don't. Perhaps any hero has something that he can add, but the reality is that we are pretty much geared and we are pretty much biased towards climate change mitigation projects. And that's the sad reality of things. But if you incorporate a financial range of products in which you price your loan or you price your equity ticket and you incorporate KPIs that introduce a bonus on the price, a decrease in the price, or you waive an X% of your carry as an LP, as an investor, you're going to generate very good and very powerful incentives. And also, if you couple that with capacity building, with technical assistance, and in the way in which we see it is through the through burdening or through sharing the burden of consultancy costs, formation costs, and verification costs. The both pillars or both sides, reduction in pricing and capacity building, become a virtuous cycle. So I think it is more than in trying to find the correct projects, which you ought to be able to find them if you're in the game of financing. So it's that's something like the valor to a soldier. It's something that it's supposed to be there. Yeah. But the important thing is to have in my opinion, a wide range of financial products that are tailor-made and are specific in incorporating sustainability aspects into the pricing and into the incentives of the projects you are financing in developing countries.
Yeah, it does make sense. Thank you so much. But you talk about adaptation and mitigation, but could you share examples of successful climate development projects that are financed by Conferencia and discuss key challenges and lessons learned in coordinating between public and private funding sources, because at the end of the day, we can do that alone. We need to see how we can make our pieces work together.
Yes, thank you very much, Elsa. I'm going to be very specific, and my good friend Anton Leys is probably going to have a smile about this, because I'm going to talk about a project that we are financing together, which is very dear and near to our common hearts, which is the Quali Fund. And the Quali Fund is a very good example of private and public partnerships in adaptation finance. Why? Because it is the dream poster child of what an adaptation project can be. It ticks all the boxes. Adaptation, de-risking, technical assistance, first loss guarantees, private sector mobilization, catalytic effect. It has everything, and we're very proud of that. Yes, Quali Fund in essence is a fund that has been incorporated by a GP, which is an impact investor, which is called GAWA, that we are promoting and that we're supporting together with the Spanish Cooperation Agency. And the investment thesis of the fund is to transform production processes and business models of companies with technologically innovative climate solutions and financial service providers and their borrowers, which are going to be SMEs and especially smallholder owners, smallholder farmers, small owners of land in Latin American countries and in India. And the objective of the fund is to, through equity instruments and through debt instruments, to promote and to invest into more sustainable and inclusive models with best climate practices that take into charge adaptation, with rotation of crops, with low carbon technologies, and so on, so on. The target of the fund is modest. It's the hard cap is 300 million euros. But the significant thing, and this is where the value added comes in, is that both the Green Climate Fund, the United Nations Green Climate Fund, and the European Union are going to provide a first loss capital guarantee of around 40 million euros. That's around roughly 10% of the total endowment of the fund. So the catalytic incentives that generates into private investors to lock in and tap in as LPs of this fund are enormous. And and from the point of view of institutional investors, the Spanish corporation, AECID, is going to provide 50 million euros through a parallel debt vehicle. So that's the cherry on the top of the icing. And at the same time, and this is fantastic, we have also managed to close a commitment for a technical assistance facility with an overall amount of 13 million euros that is going to be funded by the Green Climate Fund and European Commission. So you have everything from an de-risking point of view. You have everything. You've got a first loss guarantee. You've got technical assistance in order to improve practices in small farmers and small owners of land in Latin American countries and India, which are perhaps the countries that are the most affected by the negative effects of adaptation and climate change adaptation. And voila, and for us it's a small project, but it's very, very powerful because it ticks all the right boxes at the right times, and it is very catalytic, and the value added of the Spanish Cooperation Agency, the value added of its participation and of COFIDES is very strong. We have been able to gain a lot of traction with this vehicle, and it's the first operation that we have presented to the Green Climate Fund since we are an accredited entity, COFIDES, and for us it's very special and very dear to our heart.
And I wouldn't call it small, as you said, it ticks all the boxes, and it's an excellent example of how public, private, and different stakeholders can join in and put together for common efforts. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. It has been very interesting. I would like to ask you another question, if it's fine for you. As a representative of a development finance institution, what can you tell us from your experience as a long-term finance provider of the perceived tensions between the climate and the development? Because they not always have been hand by hand.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Elsa. Well, you know there are two more speakers, right? So
I know, but we have time.
Don't overburden me. Yes. Climate and development, it's a tricky relationship, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I think we've already established, or it has been established by far brighter minds than myself, that the global climate finance needs are to the tune of, 5 trillion yearly. and most of it in developing economies. So that means, and I'm not going to be a doomsday scenario prophet, but we've got an enormous challenge in order to meet the 2030 and the 2050 decarbonization targets that we have set ourselves, agreements and in the multilateral system. And as a matter of basic fairness and climate justice, as I said previously at the beginning of the panel, that developing countries cannot foot the bill. They cannot, because it is impossible, it isn't fair, and the money is simply not there, especially for countries that just account for what? A fraction of greenhouse emissions. So the climate development nexus ought to be framed in that landscape. Now, developing countries are especially vulnerable to the effects of climate change, including its negative effects, distribution effects, efficiency effects, and so on, so on. So there's a clear nexus also between the aim to mitigate the consequences of climate change, both in adaptation and mitigation, and the longer-term positive economic benefits of those countries. I mean, Cofidis, as a long-term financier and an institutional investor, perceives, well, the conventional wisdom is that, and I suspect also for the IFC, that we perceive climate investment or climate finance as a moral obligation. Well, not really. It is more than that. It is something that is embedded and imprinted in our DNA. And Cofidis, as most peer institutions, tackles climate change as a necessary action to achieve and safeguard our investment goals. So it is part of our business model. And we've got multiple examples of that. We are in the game of clean energy investment because it's going to improve climate matrices in developing countries. It is going to increase GDP. It is going to increase capacity building. It is going to contribute to a decrease in greenhouse emissions, and that's going to generate a virtuous cycle in GDP, education, labor, incorporation of women to the market, etc., etc. But the impact-related opportunities linked with climate change investment are well understood. However, there can be tensions, and there are tensions between climate and development investing objectives. And it is clear, and I see it every day. And these tensions are evident in capital allocation strategies and on the definition of our portfolios. In particular, in discussions that we have with regards to investments in, say, natural gas-fired power plants in developing countries. Well, of course, that's going to generate a pernicious side effects in terms of increased emissions, but those countries might need to incorporate gas gradually on their climate and on their energy systems in order to abate carbon and other hard-to-abate fuels. So there's a debate there. There's a disjunction between climate and development, at least on paper, and that tension is also evident in a developing country context in which renewable energy power sources may not be adequate to provide the baseload capacity that they need because, I don't know, perhaps the incentives are not there, perhaps the regulatory framework is also not there, who knows, because of a myriad of things. In my point of view, or our standing is that while acknowledging this debate, in Cofidis we do not finance fossil fuels at all. So it's part of what we do. But we must acknowledge this reality. There might be, I don't want to say a negative debate or a quarrel between climate and development, but there's something that must be acknowledged. And we must do it, and we must acknowledge, and we must try to find a solution from an institutional point of view through collaboration between institutional investors, multilateral actors, sovereign wealth funds, MDBs, etc., etc. And here, in order to beat this disjunctive or this dystopia between, or this perceived dystopia, better said, between climate and development, there are a number of great tools that we can use. Blending, de-risking financial structures, optimal use of MDB resources, importance of formation, capacity building and technical assistance, etc., etc. Those are the things that we already know. We've been speaking about the same subjects for the last 10, 15 years, but those are going to be the key in order to help us breach that perceived misalignment between climate and development objectives. Why? Because if we do not, we're going to leave the room wide open for financiers from third countries that might come into developing countries, might finance something, might label it as sustainable when in fact it isn't. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your patience and for being so so understanding. Let's go with you, Beatriz. I mean, as a private sector representative, always the private sector not always has been seen as one of the actors, and we don't have a doubt nowadays that it is. So I would like to ask you how the private sector has become a key player, of course, in your opinion, in promoting sustainable development, and in particular defines against climate change. Why would a company invest in sustainable solutions, and what challenges that it face when developing these kind of solutions?
Well, that's a tricky question to a certain extent. I do believe that that things have changed, like in the former years, definitely. Antonia and I were talking about this, like the role of the private sector has been consolidated, like in international development maybe in the last decade. And now we are felt and perceived, I think, in my opinion, as a more legitimate actor in this regard, in this
Absolutely
area. And formerly, it was not seen like that, you know. The thing is that the challenge is, of course, the rationale of investing in climate and development solutions is that, of course, as I said before, is we do need to do it because we are part of the problem, we do have the responsibility, but there is an opportunity. According to a recent study of McKinsey, there are at least 11 high potential value pools, you know, like valued in, I think it's like 13 trillion of yearly revenues. These underlie an opportunity of the net zero transition and accomplishment of the 2030 agenda and the SDGs. So, of course, there's an addressable market size there, and of course, we want to say that in this moment because climate is being used as a political instrument, and we want to say that climate is not about politics in that regard, it's about business and science. So we like to bring on these kind of figures in this polarized world we're living in right now. Well, if we want to deliver like that kind of regenerative solutions that, of course, not only tackle down specific functions, but their multi-functionality, they try to drive SDGs and everything. What we do need is, of course, we find some challenges. First of all, regarding infrastructure, which is the most of the complex sectors in the economy, we find that there is not a balance in terms of risk and rewarding, because we can have like more or less 3 to 5% of margin of revenues, but rather a 10% to 30% of potential losses normally. So there is a gap here to be addressed. And also, investment pace is too slow. And in the third place, like the main challenge is that, of course, at Acciona and the private sector, we want to be part of the solution. We want to deliver these kind of regenerative solutions well. But, well, we do not want to be like passive financiers, you know, of this kind of solution the world needs, you know. But we feel that we find a competitive disadvantage in terms of costs. For example, in the case of Acciona, the company, the majority of our clients is public, you know, then we find that we are not competing in the same terms with that infrastructure or solutions providers that are business as usual. So, of course, we will not wait until policy and regulation is developed, but in the long run, we think it is a priority to develop like certifications, like Blue Dot Network with the OECD or with Fast Infra, that recognize the value added of these new solutions, like holistic and systemic solutions that tackle down climate change and other challenges, not only giving one impact, but to have a multiple add-ons. So this would be our priority, to have like purpose-driven and green public procurement, so that we can lever the play for competing with other developers. So I think that would be a priority, yeah, a challenge that is a main priority.
Thank you for being so specific and for these examples, because it's true. I mean, we talk about infrastructure, And it's great to have the private sector engaged somehow, but then there's a responsibility that's shared. I would like to ask you about what innovative financing instruments has your organization, Acciona, to explore continue developing sustainable solutions, and how do you measure the impact of these instruments? Because I'm specifically interested in that.
Well, we do have several, but I think if we talk about like the most innovative instruments, we should talk about Acciona Impact Sustainability Financing Framework, because it has a dual structure, and it is that is the innovative feature, because we combine like traditional mechanisms such as green use of proceeds and sustainability linked structures with a local impact feature. Why do we do that? Why do we combine these traditional mechanisms with local impact initiatives? Because we do believe that we want to generate additionality, and if you use a conventional, just let me use that word, conventional, sustainable financing structure, you normally use like the corporate targets that are embedded in the strategy of the company. So you're not generating additionality. You're not going one step further. So that's the reason why we came up with this double structure. So we have like 4 types of sustainable financing structures, like green use of proceeds and sustainability linked. And those 2 types, including that local initiative feature. Well, and just to have a clue, this what we do is that when we are delivering these sustainable solutions, we also have an add-on. What does it mean? We use the step downs, that is the discounts linked to these sustainable financing instruments to implement these local impact initiatives, such as, well, we have like seven archetypes in our framework, and well, we can drive, or we use like local initiatives focused on boosting training to vulnerable peoples. Of course, these local initiatives are aligned with the SDGs, so that's the reason why we tend to work to boost both climate positive impact and sustainable development impact with this framework, like training, and we also have like decarbonization plans for suppliers and for farmers in local impacts like wind farm in McIntyre in Australia, like the purchase of low and zero carbon steel on concrete in suppliers. We do have like 7 different archetypes. And how do we measure like the impact we do have with these? We do have like local KPIs. We call it like local KPIs, yeah, exactly, binded to these local initiatives. And what we do is that we have accountability. We report them in our sustainability finance report, and we do have an Excel, which is a kind of tool, so you can search specifically where exactly that fund was allocated. So yeah, more or less, we do it like that. And of course, the additionality is just to use this step down into implementing these local initiatives, not keeping it. And of course, if we do not accomplish that target, we have a penalty structure that pins us and to pay for it, to PNUD, like UNEP, sorry, in English, for them to deliver this additional impact that it was intended to be delivered. If we do not, that never happened to Acciona, but if that happens, we've got that safeguard.
Thank you so much. That was very, very interesting. Mr. Nishan, you work from the World Bank, and I would like to ask you what specific initiatives the World Bank implementing to help developing countries access climate finance, and how do you ensure that these funds effectively support both climate resilience and economic growth, because it's a challenge.
Thank you, Elsa, for that question. So what the World Bank has been doing since 2 years ago is to do this evolution roadmap. And under the evolution roadmap, we are providing some incentives for countries to borrow to address a number of global challenges, including climate, and how the climate and development can be addressed together. So we have created a special framework called the Framework for Financial Incentives, where IBRD borrowers like India, Indonesia, when they want to borrow for specific climate kind of operations which have cross-border externalities, then they get a subsidy or they get a longer maturity so that there will be incentive to borrow more from us. So that's one. Another initiative is nothing, it's not really new, but it's the private sector window which is being implemented by the IFC. And you know, the funding comes from IDA. But what it does is to de-risk investments in developing countries, especially the fragile states and other difficult countries. And much of that is about renewable energy and you know, adaptation, things like that. So we have some other channels as well, but at least these two are very major ones that we deploy.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think it's good for reflection. I would like to ask you a last question, if you would like to so kind to answer, is how does the World Bank facilitate partnerships between governments and private sector across the scale and climate finance? And what challenges have you encountered in aligning these stakeholders towards common climate development goals?
So in order to induce or promote such partnerships, the World Bank group has to work together as one group. You know, the World Bank consists of the World Bank, which is IDA and IBRD, then we have the IFC, and then we have MIGA. And increasingly, we are working together as one group to provide solutions that cater to both the public and private sector, including for the same projects which have public and private sector components. One example of some recent initiatives we've taken is to create a unified guarantee platform, you know, which consolidates all kinds of guarantee products that we had in the World Bank Group into one specific platform that is organized, managed by MIGA. And so that is expected to make it much easier for private sector to access guarantees and also enable the private sector to tap into what the World Bank does in terms of knowledge and capacity building and things like that.
Thank you so much. I think that has been very insightful. Thank you very much, all of us, for all of you for being here. For the closing remarks, I had the privilege to have here with us Anton Leis, Director of Spanish Agency for International Development Cooperation. Anton is currently the Director of ICID, but he has an extensive experience in the field of international development cooperation and multilateral affairs, both in international organizations and the Spanish government. Previously, he held various positions in the Organization of Economic Co-Organization Development, the OECD, worked as a senior advisor in the General Secretariat for International Affairs, European Union, G20, and Global Security for the Cabinet of the President of the Spanish government, and was advisor to the Secretary of the State of International Cooperation. As a professional dedicated to development, he specialized in economic governance, competitiveness, the private sector. He worked at the African Development Bank as a senior governance and private sector specialist in Tunisia and on Ivory Coast, after joining its young professional program, and as a legal advisor at the World Bank, covering the African, Latin American, and the Caribbean regions, from the Washington, D.C. headquarters. He holds a law degree from the Carlos III University of Madrid, a Master of Laws from Harvard Law School, and the Dual Master in Public Administration from the London School of Economics and the Institut d'études politiques de Paris, Sciences Po. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you very much, Elsa. Thank you to the speakers. Thank you to our friends at FIAP. Is this working? Yes, it is working. I just need to speak more loudly. For convening this important discussion, I would say 10, 20 years ago, none of us would probably be here and certainly not sitting in the same... This is better? Yeah, yes. Slightly better.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. None of us would be sitting here, would be at a COP, and would certainly not be sitting together. And I think that's a testimony that more and more when development practitioners, and that goes certainly for DFIs, for international financial institutions like the World Bank, or bilateral agencies like ICID, we are more and more concerned not just about poverty and inequality, which is what the development system was invented to tackle, but also these other elements. And we do so because certainly protecting the planet it's important for the people that live in it, but also because climate change has important distributional consequences. It leads to poverty, it leads to forced displacement, it leads to inequalities, gender gaps, etc. So what it is that we need, and looking at trying to summarize a bit the discussions, and also we wouldn't be sitting, by the way, with the private sector here, with Acciona as a company that is committed to not just corporate social responsibility, but as you said, ESG, environmental, social, and governance standards. What is it that we need, and what's the right mix? How do we solve this nexus, this dichotomy between climate and development finance? I think we need three things. First is political will, and the political will is certainly there on the part of Spain. We adopted last year a new law on development cooperation and global solidarity that commits to 0.7. That's the traditional ODA. We are increasing our resources slowly but steadily. Well, not that slowly, but steadily. That includes, of course, this flagship new commitment to IDA that announced by Minister Carlos Cuerpo in Washington, that 40% increase that I think is meant not just to reflect our own efforts, but also to lead others in the same avenue to support like the poorest, most disadvantaged countries in the world. But it also this law has also a new narrative that portrays what we do, less about aid and more about partnership, on trying to find win-win partnerships on how to tackle global challenges. And that's what we do with our partner countries. Climate, of course, poverty and inequalities that remain our worst enemy, and still for the World Bank, it's, in the atrium at the World Bank, I think it still remains the sentence, our dream is a world free of poverty in a livable planet, and that's the addition that President Banga, very timely and very pertinent addition that was added. So we do need this political will. Spain has it. Our Prime Minister, who's here today, committed to an increase of 50% in our climate finance. I'm happy to report that we are overachieving that, and that's in no part to the effort that we are doing at AECID and our financial cooperation. The second is precisely finance. We know the funding gap. We need additional resources. We cannot make our partner countries choose between protecting the planet or feeding their people or providing opportunities. So we need additional resources, and there is a lot of innovation. I think the banks, the IFIs are being asked to squeeze their capital. They are doing their best. There is the rechanneling of SDRs, where Spain is also a leader. There are other opportunities as well when it comes to debt. You mentioned debt moratorium, debt suspension. Also, our colleagues in the Treasury and the Spanish Ministry of Economy are also leading that charge. We need domestic resource mobilization, and by the way, also environmental taxes, environmental taxation. So we need to throw everything we have at the interrelated links of different biodiversity, climate, poverty, inequality, all of it. And the last thing we need, I mentioned three things: political will, finance, but we need innovation and partnerships. So innovation, certainly we are doing what we can in Spain as well. We are reforming ourselves. We will have in a few months a new financial instrument that will be able to do things we couldn't do before, like policy-based lending, which is a good alternative, like to boost reforms, for instance, in changing the energy mix, at leveraging better the private sector. Guarantees, the role of guarantees and de-risking is fundamental to bring sustainable investment into the developing countries. And innovation in some of the instruments. And I think Cofides mentioned the strong partnership we have on Uruma and now Quali, on impact investment. There is a lot of money out there in the financial markets. Our role is really to mobilize it, and that includes everything. Technical cooperation, public technical cooperation, what FIAB specializes in, but also all these more complex financial instruments that we are looking at the moment. But last, I said innovation and partnerships. None of us, certainly not the private sector, certainly not governments, not even the World Bank as a big IFI, would be able to meet all these challenges if we do not work together. And I sense a big change, I have to say, having worked at the bank back in the day, everybody has realized how small we are compared to the challenges we have. And we need to change the logic of competition for cooperation, leave our respective silos, invent and create new instruments to work together, and certainly with the private sector. So thanks again for joining this discussion. I learned a lot. I hope everyone enjoyed the discussion as much as I did. And we need to leave this room fired up and deliver for people and planet. So, and we can only do that if we work together. So that's what we certainly commit from Spanish Development Cooperation. I'm sure everyone in this panel shares the same view. So thank you all. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much, Anton, and thank you everybody online that has been joining us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, great to, yeah, and great that we can deliver.